Why are the visual arts important for Christians? To answer this question, we must first answer the question of why the visual arts are important for anyone, anywhere. E.H. Gombrich states that art is a mirror or reflection of a society. Furthermore, a culture's beliefs are solidified in their art. Truly, there is a way in which art can reveal things about people, a place, a context, or a culture that words simply cannot always do. Art teaches us about both the artist and the things surrounding the art. You can learn a lot about an artist by the materials they use, the style they portray, or even the medium they use. Many times, the medium is a part of the message. This being said, the visual arts can be interpreted many different ways. Formally, expressively, or contextually. It can be talked about literally. What is it that the art is showing us specifically? The Mona Lisa, painted by Leonardo da Vinci, can be described formally as a simple painting of a woman. But what does this tell us about Da Vinci? What can we learn about him through how he painted the Mona Lisa, or the techniques he used? This is the expressive way to view art. The Mona Lisa was painted over a series of 7 years. Perhaps this tells us that Da Vinci was a detail-oriented and very specific or perfectionist person and artist. It reveals his awareness of the human body and what it looks like structurally and physically. And still, you can take art another step forward. Contextually, one thought is that the piece is a portrait of the wife of Francesco del Giocondo and could be entitled La Giocondo. It is important to know these things about the artwork in order to truly understand and comprehend the art for what it is. We can learn so much simply by looking at it. Visual arts are important simply because of the lessons they can teach us about ourselves, our culture, and our values.
Moreover, art can be a form of communication. As shown and proven in prison inmates, art can help people to express what they are feeling and communicate things that may be too hard to state in words, or even things that someone does not know how to put into words. Art allows for an escape, to redirect negative emotions into a healthier and safer release. It can also be beneficial in lowering depression, helping socialization, and boosting problem solving and compliance. The formal term for this is art therapy, and it has been used to help many people, including those incarcerated. Art can be anything the artist wants it to be. Picasso continuously invented and pioneered new art types because there are no rules when it comes to creating. The style of the art is entirely up to the artist. This is one of the biggest draws to art for anyone, but especially Christians. You cannot translate art. It is the beauty and ideals and truths of the person who created it. And as a viewer of art, we have the opportunity to see that beauty and truth. Communication is not always an easy thing. Sometimes talking isn't as impactful as a song or even something visual. Movies about heavy topics like cancer or racial inequalities can be difficult to watch and invoke bigger emotions like sadness and anger from its viewers. In the same way, a comedy or feel-good movie can invoke happiness or laughter from its viewer, differently than how just reading or listening to the story would. The visual arts entice many different senses and therefore are an important method to communicating. This answers the important question of why art is important for everyone, which can help to explain why it is essential for Christians and what art means through a Christian paradigm. Art is expressive, it's a reflection of society, a teacher, an escape, and it's an important mode of communication.
We can also seek to explain the gospel and other aspects of Christianity to non-believers through art. Realistically, art connects to people in ways that other modes of communication cannot. Visual depictions that have meaning behind them can help people to understand and grasp concepts they could not before. Many visual aspects used in Christian art point towards the invisible God and his power, reign, and love. Since Christians value the immaterial, unlike the Romans, the art that is made that is God-honoring has more feeling behind it. Art can open our eyes to see things in new light, especially as Christ followers. We must be willing to take new approaches to the gospel, including listening to and talking to God. We've already talked about how the arts can help people express feelings they may not understand or be able to form into words, and this is true with Christians as well. Visual art can make explaining the gospel or the nature of God easier than words can. People are drawn to art, even if they do not understand it. There is something about it that is alluring and beautiful. This is a lot like God. God can be confusing and incomprehensible, but there is something about him that causes us to want to know more and to want to understand. The visual depictions of the Christian story can be emotionally evoking. The art piece of Christ Crucified by Diego Velázquez shows just how Jesus Christ suffered and died on the cross. Seeing a man hanging limply is much more powerful than just being told that someone died for you. The visual changes how we understand the story and how it impacts our faith and lives. This specific painting by Velázquez makes the story so much more real and emotional. This is just one example of how the visual arts can change our communication and ministry to others, believers and non-believers alike. The visual arts are necessary because of how they change our conversations and communication.
The biggest reason that visual art should be important to Christ followers is that we can learn more about God and who he is through art. Much like an artist speaks through their art, we can see this pattern in God as he speaks through his creation. The work of an artist is specific to themselves and can be seen as an image or portrait of the artist. God is seen through his creation in a similar way. We can see God as the image of God, such as John 10:30, when Jesus states that him and the Father are one. The work of God, his creation, presents who he is to all who witness it. We can see the beauty of God in the trees and nature all around us, but we can also see God in ourselves, such as we were made in his image. In Genesis 1:26, God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." Much like you can see the passion, beauty, and likeness of an artist from artwork they created, you can see God's character in what he created. Many Christians find themselves connecting with God through his creation. If God himself is an artist and we are made in his imago Dei or image, what does that make us? God is the ultimate author and artist. Look around at the trees and the flowers and the sky and the sun. Or look at the stars and the moon at night, or look directly at yourself. God is in all of these things. Whether we realize it or not, the visual arts are all around us, especially in things that God has created. He named all of creation good after he finished making it. God can be reflected by the art of the world, and even in the art of other artists too. Also, much art has moral background to it, and that reflects God to us. The Mona Lisa, as discussed earlier, has connotations of joy, which is something that we can find in God. True joy comes directly from the maker of joy himself. This is the most important part and reason to see visual arts as important as a Christian. God is an artist himself, and we can see God in his artwork, in his creation's artwork.
The last reason that visual arts are important to Christians is because art is much like our worship. Worship is a gift that we can take part in, and neither of the two are useful in the sense of culture, but somehow both art and worship have meaning and importance. They are where grace overflows. Art is the aspect of culture that cannot be reduced to simple utility. There's a lot at stake in the terms of art and worship. There are two things we need in society, but things we cannot make useful. In the article For the Bride, the author talks about the idea of reducing everything to just as useful. Generosity, music, power, and even people are just useful if we forget that culture is a gift. This is a point that the author makes strongly, the importance of culture being a gift from God that was destroyed in the fall of man. We must revert to the idea that culture is a gift, a calling, and an obedience. This is what we find in art. How we engage in art as Christians shapes what our culture is going to be. Art shapes Christian culture, whether our response is to accept art or reject it. Either way, we are saying something.
In conclusion, the reasons that the visual arts are so important in the Christian view is because of how we see God in art, how God himself is an artist and calls us to be artists, how it is a beautiful form of communication, and how it points us to culture and context. The visual arts are essential for everyone and everywhere. We are constantly intaking the visual arts, and the ways in which they shape us are massive. Even more, the ways in which we use the visual arts never end. The creativity of God gifted with us is waiting to be used. We must see the visual arts as essential, even if they are not necessarily useful in the terms that culture might deem. Regardless of what culture says, art can be useful in expression and understanding and truth-telling. We must let art be the backbone of our culture and lives, especially in Christian contexts, to best minister to others. We must take art seriously, and we must understand its importance.